So what is network attached storage, or simply NAS? Well, I'm glad you asked, because in this lesson we're going to talk about what is NAS. So NAS is a purpose-built computer appliance designed to serve data on an Ethernet/IP network to a variety of different clients. So when you think of a computer appliance, we're thinking of a device that's customized both from a hardware but especially from a software perspective, and its sole purpose is to serve data. And how that's different than from, let's say, a file server is typically a general purpose server, which means it's typically has a variety of functions it can play, and one of the roles it can do is file services. But when you start dealing with a NAS is purpose built to serve out data, and that's its sole job, and it's highly scalable and highly redundant compared to a traditional single server. So NAS, the important concept to understand with NAS, and if there's anything you get out of this tutorial, is it's file-based storage. So NAS is file-based, and it uses a couple of protocols, and you've probably heard of them before. One called NFS, or Network File System. So NFS is very common in the Unix and Linux world. In fact, Sun Microsystems invented NFS, so it's been the staple for file services in the Unix world for probably about 20 years. On the Windows side, we have a couple of options: Server Message Block, or SMB, and Common Internet File System, or CIFS. So SMB is the most recent iteration of Windows File Services. In fact, SMB is been around for a long time. You will see it used interchangeably with CIFS, or Common Internet File System. So CIFS was the original older version of SMB, and the naming convention kind of evolved as the protocol evolved over time. But think of SMB as CIFS, a lot of times used interchangeably, but that's what the Windows world uses for file services. So going back to an enterprise NAS system, we talked about being a purpose-built appliance. So it has redundancy built, and it's also highly scalable. So it has two controller heads, so two appliances for redundancy, and both of them can take over if the other one fails. And it contains a large number of disks, much more than a traditional server does with DAS-based storage. You can put dozens, if not hundreds, of disks behind these controller heads, and then it gives you the ability to scale the system, so you're not having to, again, have storage islands, which we talked about in the DAS section, where you have multiple file servers. Instead of maybe having 10 file servers, I could put all that data under a single NAS device. So let's look at the history of network attached storage. So NAS started to grow in popularity in the 1990s. This was, when we were still dealing with servers with locally attached storage. NAS became a popular option because we wanted to stand up servers, and we wanted to share out data files so people in offices, for example, could access the same data. So NAS started to grow in popularity, starting with file servers. But around that time, we had NetApp, or Network Appliance, actually come up with the first commercial enterprise NAS. NAS was a better method for sharing files among multiple computers because of what we talked about in the previous lesson, and in this one, than general purpose servers with locally attached storage. Again, more redundant, highly scalable, and it really started to allow us to move to this concept from storage islands, where I have data residing on different servers, to maybe a more centralized approach of storing data. So it was originally designed for unstructured data. When we talk unstructured data, we're talking files. So we're talking Word docs, PDFs, images. And most people are putting Office documents up there in a shared location. And NAS wasn't generally associated with high performance at the time. But eventually, through the 2000s and to today, NAS, especially NFS and then now SMB, both protocols are highly used and are widely adopted, not only just for unstructured data, but you can run databases, you can run virtualization. So these use cases are becoming more common, and it's a more general purpose protocol for sharing data for a variety of reasons. And part of that is because it's ease of deployment. And we'll talk about this in the future lesson, but typically standing up a NAS is a lot easier than setting up a SAN, which we'll talk about in the next lesson. So there's a lot of benefits of a NAS. And NAS is something that isn't going away. In fact, if anything, the concept and the protocols behind NAS are still very common today. So hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. See you in the next one.